This isn't random. You being here, right now, is a signal from your deepest self. What you're feeling, that tension, that sense of a gathering storm, is not a malfunction. It is the opening note of a profound shift. You are standing on the edge of what your conscious mind calls impossible, but a deeper part of you knows otherwise. This is the precipice of becoming. That sensation of ground crumbling beneath your feet. That quiet, unshakable dread. What if it isn't a warning of collapse, but the first tremors of an emergence? Throughout my work, I witnessed a pattern. The moments of greatest tension, of utter stuckness, were not dead ends. They were the psyche's forge. What seems like a breaking point is often a bending point, a preparation for a shape you cannot yet imagine. And this process, I assure you, is already active within you. You are in a state of total arrest. This isn't simple laziness. It is a complete impasse. Every logical door is sealed. Every path mapped by reason leads back to the same empty square. You've used your intellect. You've made plans. You've tried harder. You've sought advice. Yet the situation remains, immovable as a boulder in your stream. The true pain. You've even lost the ability to dream of a way out. This feels like final failure. But it is, in fact, the essential signal. It is the sign that a deeper intelligence is preparing to take the lead. I identified a principle that our modern worship of conscious will struggles to accept. True transformation can only emerge when the conscious mind, in its admirable but limited effort, finally stops its frantic striving. This isn't a failure of logic. It is the humble admission that logic has reached the shore of its known world. Beyond it lies a different ocean. Your conscious awareness is a brilliant tool, but it only works with what is already known. It reassembles old data. Yet the crisis you face is novel. It is a new equation, demanding a new symbol, one that doesn't yet exist in your waking vocabulary. To find it, you must consult the participatory wisdom of the unconscious. In my observations, a remarkable phenomenon recurred. When a person is suspended between two irreconcilable opposites, craving freedom yet bound by fear, wanting change yet paralyzed by it, an immense tension builds within the psyche. It is from the heat and pressure of this very tension that a third possibility is born. I term this the transcendent function. It is not a compromise. It is something wholly new, an unimagined resolution that seems to emerge from a creative void. This function is the silent architect behind every genuine metamorphosis you've ever heard described. The pattern is unmistakable. First, imprisonment, then exhaustive conscious effort that fails. Finally, at the point of surrender, a new direction appears as if gifted. This is not luck. It is the transcendent function at work. But there is a vital condition. This function cannot operate while the conscious mind maintains its rigid grip. It requires a state of conscious surrender. You must, in a sense, let go of the known shore without yet seeing the new one. This act of releasing control is felt by the ego, the captain of your conscious identity, as a kind of death. And so, the experience feels like a breakdown, because, to the ego, surrender is a dying. You have likely felt the approach of this transition. Signs have appeared, but without a lens to understand them, they seemed like omens of distress. I documented these psychological precursors. Their presence is not cause for despair, but confirmation. You are nearer than you think. The first sign plays out in the theater of night, the vivid, unforgettable dream. These aren't faint memories. They are experiences of stunning clarity that cling to you all day. Dreams of falling, of being lost in mazes, of confronting immense shadows. The rational mind dismisses them. But I tell you, they are the soul's most serious labor. The unconscious is using this symbolic language to rehearse the great drama of your transformation. The second sign is a thick, visceral resistance. Life feels viscous. Every action is mired in psychic friction. To get out of bed is a conquest. This is often mistaken for depression, but its origin differs. This resistance is the last defiant stand of the established ego. It senses a revolution coming from the depths, an upheaval that will dismantle its familiar kingdom, and it throws up every barrier, manufacturing exhaustion to maintain the status quo. The third sign is external corroboration, the collapse of old forms. The structures you built your career path, relationships, projects, begin to falter in ways that feel senseless. You followed the rules, yet it falls apart. The conscious mind cries failure, but from the perspective of the unconscious, this is a necessary demolition. The psyche is clearing away the outdated containers of your life vessels that have become too small for the spirit seeking birth. It is creating, through apparent chaos, the sacred space required for the new. This entire process is inherently alarming. True transformation is not a polite consultation. It is an ordeal. It arrives with the force of a natural law when the old adaptation has become a prison. To illustrate, consider a man, a composite of many. He had achieved worldly success, yet felt spiritually bankrupt. His business was in ruins, his marriage hollow. He felt an existential obliteration. When he came to me, I said, "The person you have been is dying, and it is imperative that this death occur." He was not suffering random misfortune. He was in the throes of a metamorphosis his conscious self could not grasp. For years, his unconscious had sent messengers restlessness, aches, troubling dreams whispering his path was false. He ignored them. Finally, to save the totality of the individual, the unconscious orchestrated the collapse of the inauthentic life itself. The turning point arrived when he ceased the futile struggle. He stopped trying to repair the old structure with old tools. He surrendered the illusion of control. In the fertile silence that followed, the unconscious began to speak a new language. Dreams shifted. They no longer depicted crisis, but suggested symbols of renewal, an unexpected path, a forgotten talent, a calling that defied previous logic. When he found the courage to follow this slender, irrational thread, a new venture began, not from ambition, but from obedience to a deeper voice. Doors opened, connections were made, a life genuinely his own took shape. The critical realization: the conscious ego did not engineer this redemption. The transcendent function generated the saving symbol. But its activation hinged on one thing: the conscious mind's courageous act of surrender. Your breakdown is the ground being cleared for a new foundation. You who listen are in that same crucial terrain. Your life isn't falling apart because you are inadequate. It is dissolving because its current form is no longer congruent with the totality of your being. The you you've known is insufficient for the destiny that calls. This is why old efforts feel futile. You are trying to solve a transcendental problem with a tool meant for empirical tasks. It will not work. The unimaginable demands not just a new action, but a new actor. The pattern follows an archetypal sequence. It begins with conflict. Two mighty opposites on your inner stage, the voice for change and the voice of terror. This creates a psychic crucible. The failed solution is to choose one side and violently suppress the other. The transcendent function operates differently. It activates only when you can consciously endure the tension of the opposites without choosing. When you can say, "I desire this new life, and I am paralyzed by terror," and hold both as valid. This is the alchemical moment, the holding of contradiction. You become the vessel that can contain the tension. In that containing, a transmutation occurs. When you can bear this state, a subtle shift happens. The unconscious, no longer opposed, begins to offer contributions. A sudden insight upon waking. A chance meeting with a person who speaks the exact word you needed. These are not accidents. I called them synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that reveal a unifying principle behind psyche and world. They are the fingerprints of the transcendent function. Yet, the solution presented will never conform to the ego's expectations. It may seem foolish or frightening. This is because the unimaginable is the embryo of a new identity, and birth always demands the sacrifice of the old. I studied sacrifice in myth and ritual. The pattern is universal. Real transformation requires a sacrificial act, but the sacrifice is not of objects. It is the sacrifice of the persona, the mask you constructed to meet the demands of family, society, your own early hopes. This mask feels like your face, but it is not the self. The new wine of spirit cannot be held in old wineskins. They will burst. Therefore, the old identity must be surrendered, allowed to die a symbolic death. This is the true meaning of the breakdown. It is the visible cracking of the persona under the pressure of the emerging self. There is no bypassing this. The path to your totality leads directly through the graveyard of your former identities. Consider the person who has been the perfect citizen, the ideal partner, yet inside feels a terrifying hollowness. My question to them was always, who were you before they told you who you ought to be? This inquiry opens a floodgate. They see the small betrayals, a native passion for art, surrendered for practicality, a true opinion silenced for harmony. The authentic personality was sacrificed. The method to reclaim these lost fragments is what I termed active imagination. It is a disciplined dialogue with the unconscious. One sits in quiet receptivity, inviting images and emotions to rise without censorship. Slowly, the forgotten self begins to speak. As these disowned parts are reintegrated, a transformation occurs. The individual becomes more real, and in that reality, the unimaginable becomes possible. A crucial principle, this wholeness cannot be a conscious goal. You cannot plan to become yourself. It is a paradoxical achievement that comes when you create a silent, expectant space within and allow the unconscious to move. You are being forced by inner necessity to create that inner space. The collapse, the helplessness, the futility, these are not your enemies. They are the agents of the psyche, demolishing the crowded marketplace of your ambitions to make an empty chapel for the spirit. But you must cooperate. You must learn the difficult art of sitting in the fertile void without fleeing into panic. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This is the supreme challenge. The ego's instinct is to seize control, to make a new plan. But such actions are like pulling on a shoot to force growth. They violate the organic tempo of the psyche. Active patience is not passive waiting. It is a state of heightened, non-grasping awareness. You attend to subtle inner movements, the fleeting intuition, the mood, the dream symbol. You observe, but you do not attempt to wrest a specific outcome. You trust the teleology of the psyche, its drive toward wholeness, even in outer darkness. Think of the acorn. It contains the oak, but does not know it. When conditions demand, it allows its shell, its former identity, to be split apart. It sends a tender root into the crushing dark and a shoot toward unseen light. It becomes what it could not imagine while whole. You are that acorn. The cracking feels like annihilation because it is the end of one state. But what stirs within is the pattern of your wholeness. Here is the great paradox. The unimaginable is not an external event that befalls a passive individual. It is a creative act the total psyche performs through the individual. You are the living vessel, the alchemical retort. But you can only be a true vessel if you cease trying to dictate the recipe. This is where many turn back. They sense the numinous, see structures tremble, and in fear, retreat. They reclaim control, force a premature solution, and sever the connection. The process halts, leaving barren cynicism. The journey requires a fundamental trust, not in external forces, but in the wisdom of the self, the central core of your total personality. It is a trust that the unconscious, though it speaks in terrors, is ultimately working toward your individuation. The breakdown has a purpose. It is the labor pain of a new consciousness. To see crisis as hidden breakthrough requires a shift as radical as Copernicus's. You must place the self, not the ego, at the center of your psychic solar system. Let me be plain. This is the most difficult task. To stand in ruins and choose not to rebuild the same fortress, but to wait for a new architecture to be revealed, goes against every survival instinct of the ego. The ego will rant. Fear will shriek. Doubt will mock. But what your fear cannot know is this: the unconscious is not your saboteur. It is your deepest ally. Its seemingly destructive actions aim to liberate you from a life of imitation. It seeks to shatter the glass bottle so the genie of your potential can be free. It cannot give you that life while your hands are clenched white-knuckled around the ghost of the old one. So the defining question is not, will the transformation happen? The forces of the psyche have already set it in motion. The only question is, will you participate? Or will you resist? Will you yield to this process that feels like death? Will you lay down the arms of your willful striving? Will you extend trust to an intelligence that operates in symbols? For my research revealed a humbling truth. Those who experience profound renewal are simply those who, when brought to the brink, found the courage to let go. They allowed the transcendent function its reconciling magic. You are among them. Your presence here is testimony. You may feel shattered, adrift, ignorant of what's next. But this fertile confusion is the hallmark of the liminal zone. Confusion isn't a sign you're lost. It is the sure sign the old, well-trodden path has ended at a cliff's edge, and the bridge to the new land is not yet visible. You stand in the sacred, terrifying gap between realities. It is in this gap, if you can endure it, that all potentialities exist. I once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But this privilege is rarely claimed, for its price is high. It demands the sacrifice of your fondest illusions. It demands a faith that walks into the dark without a lantern. That terrifying honor is now yours. This crisis is the call. It is the summons from the self, louder than any external voice. It calls you to become who you were in your deepest essence before the world began its telling. And this authentic individual, now stirring, is inherently capable of the extraordinary, not from special talent, but from alignment. When you live from the vast continent of the self, not the small island of the ego, what seems a miracle becomes your natural expression. Therefore, understand this: the unimaginable is not a distant trophy. It is a living potential, a seed of wholeness already planted in your unconscious soil. It awaits not your forceful manufacture, but your permission to grow. Your task is to prepare the ground. You prepare it through the courage to surrender, the resilience to trust, the discipline of active patience, the heroic capacity to bear the tension of the unknown. This moment is the birth canal. What appears as catastrophic breakdown is the mask worn by breakthrough. This death you feel is the prerequisite for a destined rebirth. This impossible situation is not a locked door. It is the door itself, and it is opening inwards. You are ready. Do not be deceived by feelings of unreadiness. The very fact you have been brought to this edge, that these words resonate, is the proof. The self would not issue a call to one incapable of answering. The fear that grips you is not a signal to retreat. It is the somatic experience of growth, the friction of the new self emerging from the tight confines of the old. It is the ego's final legitimate protest against its own expansion. Allow the protest. Listen to its cries. But do not let it make the decision. For on the far side of that fear lies not just what you want, but what you are. Why life's work showed that the miraculous has roots in the natural laws of the psyche. It is suprapersonal. It is the lawful consequence of turning toward the unconscious with respect, of surrendering the infantile fantasy of total control, of trusting the transcendent function to bridge the abyss. You are in the heart of that process. Thus, the instruction is clear. Stop trying to think your way out of a transcendental dilemma. Cease applying old formulas. Abandon the strategies of the person you are outgrowing. Instead, turn inward. Cultivate a profound silence. Listen to the murmurs from the deep. Heed your dreams. They are letters from the self. Attend to synchronicities. They are winks from a meaningful universe. Trust even the collapse, for it is the ground being cleared. You are not losing your life. You are shedding a skin of conditioned responses so you may finally inhabit the life that is irrevocably, authentically, terrifyingly your own. This is a report from the frontier of the soul. If these words echo in you, you are already enlisted. The transformation is not coming. It is here. It is underway. Your final task is to cease your opposition. The individual you are destined to be is, by definition, unimaginable to your present consciousness. For if you could imagine them fully, you would already be them. So relinquish the need for a detailed map. Relinquish the compulsion to control. Simply take the next small, honest step that feels true from your core. Then take the next. Have an unshakable faith that the path is being laid beneath your feet with each act of sincere surrender. You possess a power you've barely glimpsed, for you carry within you the entire ancestral legacy of the unconscious, the wellspring of all myth, art, and true innovation. At this very moment, that great hidden intelligence is laboring on your behalf. It is forging the symbol that will resolve your impossible equation. Your role is not to interfere, but to allow to provide the conscious willingness, the humble vessel. This is your moment of convergence. This is your rendezvous with destiny. This is the unimaginable, preparing to incarnate in the world through the singular instrument of your life. And all that is required is your trust. If this resonated, I ask you to support this channel. Please give this video a like and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more explorations into the depths of the human experience. The journey continues.